Well, kia ora and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joined today by our Corrections Minister, Mark Mitchell, to make a significant announcement as part of Budget 2024. Our government, as you know, has a crystal clear vision of what it's going to achieve for New Zealanders. We are laser focused on rebuilding the economy and reducing the cost of living so that more Kiwis can get ahead. We will deliver better public services like health and education, and we are going to restore law and order in New Zealand because all Kiwis have a right to feel safe in their homes, their workplaces and their communities. Now, like all New Zealanders, I'm sick of hearing stories about Kiwis who are the victims of violent attacks or are having to go to work worrying about whether their business is going to be the next ram raid target. I want all New Zealanders to understand what we've inherited and the current reality that we face, because since 2018, gang membership has increased by 51%. Violent crime is up 33%. Ram raids have nearly quadrupled, they're up 290%, and retail crime has more than doubled, up 100%. Sadly, New Zealand has become less safe after 6 years of soft on-crime policies where victims have not been the absolute priority. But the good news for Kiwis is that our government has committed to a very different approach to what we've seen over the last 6 years. For us, making New Zealanders safer and reducing the number of victims is how we will measure our success. We've outlined our commitment by focusing 2 of this government's 9 better public service targets on restoring law and order. The first is 20,000 fewer victims of violent crime by 2030, and the second is to reduce serious youth offending by at least 15%. Our goal of keeping Kiwis safe is exactly what we've already taken a number of actions on with respect to law and order. 3 strikes is coming back, and we've stopped all public funding of Section 27 reports. We're adding 500 new police officers to the front line. We're putting gangs on notice and giving police substantial new powers to go after them. We're establishing military academies for the most serious and repeat youth offenders, and we have plans to change the Sentencing Act so serious offending means serious consequences. These actions are geared around making New Zealanders safer today, and they will go hand in hand with this government's approach to social investment, where we deliver interventions earlier and more effectively for those whose lives expose them to greater risk. This approach will support us to identify, to fund and to scale up actions that will have the most positive impact on people in the long run, giving them more support and better choices than a life of crime does. But all of this is to say that safety and victims are clearly this government's priority. Part of improving the safety of Kiwis means ensuring that dangerous offenders are not on our streets, where there is a high chance that they will only create more victims. That is why today we are announcing a significant uplift in funding for the front line of corrections so that we can increase the capacity in our prisons and support more offenders to turn away from crime. This investment is only possible because of the government's savings program. We're able to do this because we acted quickly since taking office to rein in government spending and to root out wasteful spending, because we want that money prioritised and going towards our frontline services. Within corrections itself, we've identified hundreds of millions of dollars from optimising back office support services that we are now reinvesting to keep New Zealanders safe. More capacity in our prisons to keep dangerous people off the street, better pay for frontline staff so we can attract and retain the right people, and more access to rehabilitation programs for offenders. This is an investment in the safety of New Zealanders and one that this government is very proud to make. And with that, I'll hand over to Mark to talk you through the detail of the announcement.
Thanks, Prime Minister. As the Prime Minister said, today's announcement is delivering on our promise of investing more in critical frontline areas to keep New Zealanders safer. The government is investing $1.9 billion in corrections to deliver more frontline corrections officers, more prison capacity and more support for offenders to turn away from a life of crime. Corrections are recruiting more officers now than ever before. We're supporting this drive by providing new funding to recruit and train another 685 frontline corrections staff, including 470 corrections officers to respond to growing prisoner numbers. Our frontline corrections staff do an outstanding job and have faced significant staffing pressures over the last few years. In recognition of this, we're also investing in pay increases for our frontline so corrections can continue to attract and retain the right people and give them the right training to do their job safely. To ensure capacity, safety and security across the prison network, we're funding an extension to Waikeria Prison that will allow for up to 810 more beds. With 45% of the prison population on remand, We need to do as much as we can to help them turn their lives around. So we're investing $78 million to ensure remand prisoners have access to the rehabilitation programs to help them achieve their goals and break the cycle of reoffending. The investment we're announcing today will support our tough-on-crime approach with sufficient prison capacity to manage the growing prison population. It will protect New Zealanders from known offenders, give offenders the support they need to make positive change in their lives, and ensure our prisons are better resourced so that police, courts and victims of crime can have confidence that offenders who pose a risk to others can be subjected to a custodial sentence. Keeping New Zealanders safe is at the heart of this investment and is part of this government's commitment to restore law and order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to quickly run through the rest of the week, or my week. I'm in Wellington until Wednesday. I'm travelling to Nelson on Thursday, in Auckland on Friday and over the weekend. And with that, Mark and I are happy to open up to any questions you may have.
Can we just get a breakdown of that $1.9 billion? So the $442 million in savings, is that all of the funding that is going towards those frontline officers, and is it $1.5 billion toward the build of those 810 beds?
Well, the $442 million is cost savings that's taken from the back office and is going to be reinvested in the front line. So it will be used across the additional recruitment, training and deployment of those corrections staff.
And is that the total budget that is being allocated to that extra uptick in officers?
No, there'll be so the uptake in officers is contained within that $1.9 billion. Obviously,
how much are the 810 extra beds costing?
Well, that's so basically the cost for prisoners in the system at the moment is $120,000 annually, and that takes into account the cost of the bed, food, sustenance, life support. So it's $120 per prisoner.
Yep. So do you know what I'll just say is just to give everyone a bit of a sense of it. It's $1.9 billion in funding going towards corrections. $442 million has come out of actually back office savings over the period of the forecast period out of corrections, and the balance has obviously come from other reprioritisations, but it's a total budget of $1.9 billion. With that, what we've got is the 685 more corrections staff going in. We've got funding for pay increases for staff. We've got obviously the extension to Waikeria, another 810 beds, and we've got also about almost $80 million in rehab services going to remand offenders as well. So all of that goes into there. There's a couple of things we can't talk about. Obviously there's commercial sensitivity around the pay piece, and there's also commercial sensitivity around the build of the prison as well. But that hopefully gives you a sense of the bucket of $1.9 billion, the activity it's covering.
The 810 new beds, are they on top of the 500 that are already being built at Waikeria?
No. So that's an addition. So we're going to, at Waikeria, we'll have 600 beds that will come online at the middle of next year, and then there'll be an additional 220 beds that come on with the new wing. We also have, under the previous government, where there was... Well, this is budgeted inside the $1.9 billion.
200 extra beds, not 800 extra beds.
No.
There's 800 extra beds going into the system.
Yeah.
By the Labour government.
And if you let me finish, what I was going to say is that under the previous Labour government, what happened was there was about 400 beds that were decommissioned because they weren't funded. We are funding those, and those are going to be brought back online. So that's an additional 400 beds that are coming online inside the system.
So how many total are going to be at Waikeria Prison?
So there'll be 820.
But so not in addition to what's
Well,
already
810, sorry.
So all of Waikeria total is going to be 810 beds.
Yes, correct.
That's fewer than are there at the moment, isn't it?
No. Waikeria hasn't been delivered. Waikeria will be delivered middle of next year.
Could you give us a sense of this, the 400, I think you said it was 400 million from reprioritisation, specifically where that came from? That's a lot of money to find down the back of the couch, especially in somewhere like prison. So can you give us some specific examples outside just backroom staff?
Well, so I can give you a high-level overview of where that's come from, and that is quite simply a reprioritisation of the delivery of services to our prisoners, and that is making sure that when a prisoner comes into corrections, you've only got them for a limited time. We want to make sure that we deliver the programs that actually are meaningful, that give them real life skills, so that when they leave prison, they've got a much better chance of reintegrating and actually rejoining society. They're also going to reprioritise around the way that they are managing assets. And of course, the third part is that there will be unfilled vacancies, and there will be some, probably less than 5 positions that are on a fixed contract that will not be renewed.
So if that's the high level, could you give me a bit of the low level of specific examples? I mean, you did mention the way that they're dealing with assets. How so? How does that save 400 million?
Well, I just think that what they've done is, and what we've asked all of the agencies to do, is to do a health check through a cost savings process to actually identify how they can manage their existing assets better. Corrections has done that. In terms of reprioritisation around services, it's quite simply corrections have been operating in silos in the way they approach and deliver programs to prisoners, and we want to get much more focused and make sure that we're actually delivering the programs that are going to actually create the most benefit for them.
Just back on the assets, how specifically I'm looking, is it something tangible, or are you talking about the way that the assets are valued? Because that wouldn't be a tangible saving, that would be just something that you chuck on a balance sheet, wouldn't it?
No.
So what we've got is essentially, look, it's the exercise we've asked all agencies to go through to say, hey, listen, look at unfilled vacant roles that you may have today, of which in the back office of corrections there was some. Reorganise yourself in a way that actually delivers and supports that. Make sure you're streamlining programs, things that aren't working, stop that dumb stuff, make sure that it's all working in the right way. There'll be improvements around asset management, there'll be improvements around a whole bunch of different things.
Specifically asking specifics.
Well, those are issues for for the corrections to answer to, but all I'm saying...
Minister for
those no, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of if we've tasked CEOs of agencies to come through with back office efficiencies and savings, and we're trying to give you a sense of what has happened. In this case, largely in corrections, it's been driven through not filling vacant roles that have existed in the back office, reorganising, and also making sure they streamline programs, and programs that aren't working, we're stopping. That's a great example of what we want to see, and that's the message that we've been trying to say since we came to power, which is that we think, given there's been an 84% increase in government spending, we know a lot of that's been wasteful spending. We know a lot of it's been building bureaucracy. We know a lot of it's been building management structures and back office functions that aren't supporting better frontline delivery. And so we are recycling that money into this, coupled with additional money that's coming in from other prioritisations and savings to make sure that corrections gets new money in order to be able to deliver what we want to deliver.
Are you going to get rid of the slushy machines?
I'd say it's a pretty low priority.
We're going to get asked about slushy machines. Look, the reality of it is...
On just the syrup.
What's that?
300k spent on just the syrup.
Well, from what I understand, it's actually it costs about $50,000 a year to run the slushy machines right through the whole entire corrections network. But the one thing I'd say to you is this, is that this is a decision for corrections themselves, but in my view, the welfare of our corrections officers must always be considered. They work in hot, cramped conditions where they're carrying 7 kgs of equipment on them, and their core temperature is actually something and dehydration is something they fight with every summer. And my expectation is corrections take the steps that they need to take to actually keep the welfare and the safety and health of our corrections officers at the
Go to Joe.
Just come back to Waikeria Prison. Sorry, just a few questions here to try and work this out. So are you referring to Araputama, which was the one announced in June 2018 at Waikeria Prison, the new site that's been built? Is that what we're talking about here, just in regards to your questions before? You said it hasn't been built. You were talking about new beds.
Well, it's the current Waikeria it's the project that is currently under construction.
Yeah, so
yes,
that's Araputama, just to be clear.
Yes,
so in June 2018, you had Calvin Davis announce plans to develop a new 500-bed facility, which is within Waikeria Prison, with an additional 100 beds in a dedicated mental health and addiction service unit. So you're saying that 400 of those weren't actually going to happen, is that right? Had gone offline, and you were putting them back into the mix. Is that the comment you were making earlier when you said that some of them weren't actually going to happen, but now they are? Is that right?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're restating our commitment as the incoming government to get that delivered. And yes, you're right, it's about 500 beds plus a specialised mental health unit of about 100 beds, which will be delivered the middle of next year.
But will now be 810 under...
Yes, because we've committed to the full expansion of Waikeria.
Right. So some had dropped, some from the 500 had dropped off, you've topped them back up, and you're now also going to add another 310 in addition to that, and where does the 100 dedicated mental health and addiction service beds fit into that?
That sits in the Waikeria. That's the first phase that will be delivered in the middle of next year.
Okay. So
that's
within the
within the
810, 100 of them are the mental health and addiction service beds?
100 of those are, yes, absolutely.
We're now down to 710 beds we're talking about, 500 announced in June 2018 by the last government, is that right?
Well, I think they are 810 beds. They're still corrections. Are still prisoners inside the system. It's just a specialised. It's a unit that can deliver additional psychological treatment for those with severe mental health issues.
Okay, so to be crystal clear, 710 beds for prisoners within this new site and 100 for mental health and addiction services, 810 total. And how many of them will be built by May?
So we'll be delivering 610 in May. And the additional, which is a whole new wing.
Yeah.
So
and there's additional 200 to come.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is the current capacity of Waikeria Prison?
So at the moment, the Waikeria prison hasn't been delivered, so it won't have.
There are prisoners at Waikeria right now.
Well, so that's the old prison. I'm talking about the new prison. I'll have to check on those numbers.
So is that old prison still being decommissioned, or are you keeping it open?
Well, again, that's a decision for corrections. At the moment, it's part of the overall network, but that'll be a decision for corrections.
So what is the capacity of Waikeria Prison going to be once you add these 800 beds?
Well, because if some of the prisons are old, and you're looking at replacement, we're looking at new investment. Christchurch Men's is a classic example. And I come back to the point that I made, is that yes, we're building 810 new beds in terms of capacity. There's an additional 400 that we're going to bring back online that were decommissioned under the previous government.
So as part of the old prison at Waikeria, there were 400 beds decommissioned, and you're going to bring
No. There were 400 beds decommissioned through the whole entire network in the country at different prisons.
The reason that I'm asking is because the previous national government to you guys promised 1,500 beds there. So are we hitting that?
Well, the thing is with Waikeria, there is the ability to, there's plenty of land there, and if we needed to, we could increase capacity there.
Talking about increasing capacity, and if you're going to end up with the same number of beds as you do with the old prison, you're just replacing things, you're not increasing capacity.
We're
810 bed extension.
Yeah, we're definitely.
It's an extension, so
absolutely.
You're keeping, so that's why I'm asking what the total number of beds at Waikeria is going to be once you add this 800.
Well, we're adding the 810 additional beds with the new facility in Waikeria. The rest of the network, that's a decision for the CEO of Corrections. It is a moving feast for us because there's been severe underinvestment in corrections over the last 6 years of the Labor government. We are bringing fresh investment into corrections. We're creating capacity because what we're doing is we're putting public safety at the heart of what we're doing, which is not what happened in the last 6 years, which means we have to build capacity, and we're building the capacity that we believe will meet our needs going forward.
There's
an 810 bed extension to Waikeria from where we sit today. We'll make sure we get you the total numbers.
How much is that 200 beds, that 200 extra beds from where we were before you guys were elected to where we're going to get to by 2026, is it? How much is that extra 200 beds going to cost?
Well, I can't give you a number now because it's commercially sensitive. We're actually... Well,
no, because we've got a prison build up and running, and it's commercially sensitive.
They're under negotiation at the moment, so there's commercial negotiations going on in terms of the delivery of the extension to Waikeria. So I can't give you a number. I can't give you a number on that because the number sits inside the $1.9 billion, and we have budgeted enough there to be able to deliver Waikeria. But at the moment, corrections are in commercial negotiations to make sure they deliver the best possible value for every taxpayer dollar spent. So I can't give you a number, I can't talk to that because there's commercial sensitivity around it.
Sorry, can I go to Adam?
Extra building, or will there be double?
On the workforce increases, after attrition, how many net extra corrections officers will we have after the 4 years?
Well, the good news is at the moment we've changed as the incoming government, we changed the recruiting campaign. That looks quite different now. We've had a massive uptake. We've had about 20,000 applications. I thought it was 13, but I got the updated number. It's closer to 20. We are currently recruiting, training and deploying 130 corrections officers a month, which is the best I've done for a long time. And finally, we've actually got ahead of attrition. So now we're getting a net gain. in terms of corrections officers coming into the system.
In terms of the question though, when we get to the 4 years, factoring in attrition, how many extra will we have?
600 extra frontline staff, correction staff.
Yes.
Factoring
685.
in the people that we're losing though, is my question.
No, well, we always have to take into attrition. Corrections will do that. What I'm telling you though is that we're on the right side of the ledger for the first time in a long time. We're actually recruiting and training, deploying corrections officers over and above the attrition rate. So we're doing very well. We've got a big pipeline of people applying. We've got big cohorts being graduated every month, and we're ahead of we're now got ahead of attrition. So we're tracking in the right direction. But as the Prime Minister said, the announcement today, it's 685.
What are the other 215 staffers? What do they do?
Well, they could be working in the community with community-based sentences. They could be psychologists. They could be a range of other roles that are frontline inside corrections.
When do those the pay increases? When do they take effect?
Well, there's one pay round negotiation that'll kick off mid-year, and the second one is in December.
The negotiations, though, not when they'll take effect.
Well, we've got to go through a bargaining process as per normal.
The pay increases will take effect, though.
Again, that's a part of the bargaining process, and all we're saying is we're budgeting for pay increases. We're obviously budgeting for the extension of Waikeria. We're budgeting for extra incremental new frontline officers. We're budgeting for extra remand services and rehabilitation services to remand.
Just one of those additional
Sorry, Jo?
1.9 billion. Can I just clarify, because if you look at last year's budget, 2024 had 1.9 billion budgeted for it. So is this a 1.9 billion announcement, or is this the makeup of the corrections budget that you're setting out?
This is the budget. So what we're saying is there's $1.9 billion of new money essentially coming into corrections, or there's $1.9 billion going to be spent on corrections. $442 million of it has come from savings that have been identified within the corrections budget through the back office functions that's been deployed out to the frontline services. And in addition to that $442 million off that $1.9 billion, there's about $1.5 billion that's coming in, that's new money coming into corrections.
So that's fairly consistent then with what was being budgeted for this year already and last year's.
This is the new money coming in on top.
But in terms of money spent year on year within the budget, I mean, 1.9 was set down for 2024, so this is consistent in terms of budget funding, isn't it, for correction?
Again, we'll look into that on budget night. You'll see it all revealed as to how it all hangs together. But what I'm just saying to you as part of this pre-budget announcement is there's $1.9 billion going to correction. About $442 million of it comes out of savings that have been recycled into that frontline service.
Sorry? On that 442, can you say where that money came from? What sort? Can you give some examples of what the savings?
Yeah, well, as I said, we've alluded to it. We've asked for savings to come out of corrections. They've gone off and done their exercise. They've identified that there were a number of unfilled vacancies that were sitting in the back office and the bureaucracy. A lot of it has come, there's been a significant amount of money that's been saved out of that, and obviously being redeploying those roles, and given they've been unfilled for some period of time. And then likewise, just streamlining some programs and making sure that what we're doing is actually working, and just reorganising the back office. So I think that's a good example of what we talked about, and I think corrections have actually done an exceptionally good job where they've taken that exercise of generating those savings, thinking through their own organisation, taking responsibility for it, and then offering those savings up, which we can recycle back into the frontline services where it needs to be. Much better use of money.
1.9, sorry, just to get on the numbers, $1.9 billion, $400 million of that is reprioritised, which leaves $1.5 billion. So is that over 4 years, right?
Correct, yep.
So that is 1.5 divided by 4. Your maths is probably better than mine. But
I doubt it, Jason. You're very good at maths.
That's new money in terms of operating allowance. That's completely new.
Correct.
Right, it is. Okay.
Yeah, correct. And that's coming from other reprioritisations and savings, which you'll see when we put the whole budget together and we announce that on May 30th for you.
Is it all operating allowance? None of that's capital?
Yes, it's all operating.
So none of it's for actually building the buildings?
Well, in that budget is the money that we need to expand Waikeria by 810 beds. In that money is also the money that we need to make sure that we are expanding the number of prison officers and corrections officers that we've got. This $80 million for rehabilitation services for remand, and obviously a pay increase as well.
So none of it, sorry, can I just absolutely double check you on that?
So yes,
no capital funding in there?
No, so the capital funding is inside the $1.9 billion.
Doesn't the 1.9 billion doesn't include what was already budgeted for in terms of that 500 beds then?
Sorry?
Does the 1.9 billion include what was already budgeted for those 500 beds, considering that that was announced in 2018? Does that 1.9 billion include what was already budgeted for those 500 beds, or does it not include that?
No, it includes that. So it covers the delivery of the 600 beds next year and the additional 210 on top of that. The one thing that I would say is that we did have to immediately, as the incoming government, the previous government only funded corrections up to 8,500 prisoners. So we've had to fund it up to 10,000 straight away. We're at about 9,600 at the moment, so we've got about 400 capacity.
Yeah, and so that extra 200 beds that you're talking about on top of the 600, is that going to be a redesign of the project, or are you going to double bunk people to make that work?
Listen, we don't want to double bunk people, but if we need to, we will. The reality of it is that we've been very clear about it, is that we are putting public safety at the heart of what we're doing. Yeah. And that means that offenders that commit crimes and are violent towards law-abiding members of our society and our communities, they're going to go to jail. We have made a big announcement today, $1.9 billion, because we're investing into our capacity to make sure that we can meet that need. We're hoping that with our approach, which is a tough on crime approach, putting victims at the heart of what we're doing, is that maybe the criminal world might figure out there's a different government here and it's just not worth it anymore.
Asking, when you were coming up with that budget, so when you're budgeting for the $1.9 billion, did you take into account building new buildings for those extra 200 beds, or will you be double bunking them in what is already being built?
Well, we'll have enough capacity that we believe we'll have enough capacity right now in terms of what we've committed to, that we won't have to move to double bunking. But I'm just saying to you that if we have to move to double bunking, we will do that.
That's a little bit confusing, because the specifications for the old project were 600 beds. You're saying there's 800 now. How can you build those beds within the same capacity?
No, what we're saying is that we're going to deliver an additional 810 beds at Waikeria, which we think is going to, without a doubt, will meet the capacity needs of the approach that we're taking to public safety in our country. And the budget, $1.9 billion, has got enough money there to be able to deliver that for us. The first stage will be delivered the middle of next year. The second stage will be delivered end of 2028.
Redesign.
Okay, sorry guys, we're going to move on. Mark?
How confident are you that this $442 million that's been reprioritised from corrections, that's only back office, it doesn't touch the front line at all? I ask because it seems to be about 10 times the annual policy advice and ministerial services budget in corrections entirely. There's obviously potentially sort of back office functions outside of policy, but how confident are you? No one is going to come out and say, I am a frontline worker and I've just had my job cut.
Look, I don't know how to make this any clearer, because this is maybe it's a completely different philosophy from what you've experienced under the previous administration. But what we've been doing has not been working. What we know is there was an 84% increase in government spending. There was 18,500 more public servants added into Wellington. There was $2 billion spent on consulting and contracting. And what we're saying is that money can be better deployed if we take those resources to deliver ourselves better outcomes. We are focused on the outcomes here, and the outcomes here are less violent crime, less members of gang members, lower levels of ram raids, retail crime. That's what our outcomes are about. So we're backward engineering and saying, you take the money and deliver those outcomes. Because it's not actually about the money is interesting to a point, and the quantum does matter, no doubt about it, but it's what you do with the money to get an outcome. And so all we're saying to corrections is,
some of that money may have been taken off the front line to go off.
Well, I'm just saying to you, the brief has been pretty clear to all the CEOs of all the agencies across government, which is there is wasteful spending going on, there is inefficiency management layers in the back office, there's huge amounts of bureaucracy that have been created, and we want that money taken out of the bureaucracy and out of wasteful spending out of the back office, and we want it prioritised to the front line. Now, that's up to the assessment of an individual CEO who we're holding to account to deliver the targets and the outcomes. So it's a different approach, right? We start with the outcomes and you work backwards to say, what do I do with the dollar to get a better result than what I was getting before? And it may mean stopping some programs that that actually just do not work. And just because we've been doing them doesn't mean we just keep doing them. We will stop dumb stuff, or we will stop stuff that's not getting results and outcomes. And that is across the whole of government. And it's very necessary because we are focused on outcomes, not the inputs, right? The inputs matter to enable you to get to that outcome, but I'm going to hold those CEOs and ministers accountable for those outputs and those outcomes.
Using that logic then, Nicola Willis has confirmed that one of the agencies that won't be having to meet that 6.5 or 7.5% cut is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So why do they get an exemption here?
Well, look, again, we'll talk about that with the budget. What we're talking about here today is actually corrections, and we're making sure that corrections is getting $1.9 billion worth of investment
traverse
behind
that
it.
pretty well. I'm just interested in MFAT. Why would they be operating outside what everybody else
Well,
has been operating
I'm
inside?
sorry, you're going to have to wait to May 30th to see the totality of the picture, but I'm just giving you a fundamental philosophy about how we're actually going to fund public services going
that
forward.
would be the case, though.
Sure, got it. But you actually have to look at it in the totality of the May 30 budget. Sorry, Adam?
On corrections, do you have a desired ratio of corrections officers to prisoners?
Look, that is a question for the Chief Executive of Corrections in terms of ratios and numbers.
As a government, do you want to impose, do you know of a ratio? Is there one now? Or if not, do you want to impose
we want
one?
we want to deliver the amount of corrections officers that corrections tell us they need to be able to run a world-class correction service.
Is
and
that
that's what we're
determined
doing.
through a ratio based
Well,
on
in terms of the ratio, I can get that information for you. I'll ask the Chief Executive to be able to supply that to you. But from a government perspective, we want to make sure that we deliver the corrections officers that we've been told they need to be able to run a world-class corrections service, to be able to deliver the programs that we want to deliver. By the way, a big part of an announcement that no one's asked us about is the $78 million that's going towards remand prisoners. And they're prisoners that under the previous government were not getting any programs delivered at all.
Okay, guys, we've got time for two more questions, sorry. Yep.
I've also got a question about the Nelson Hospital.
Sure.
On the rehab programs, it's the number of sentenced prisoners accessing rehab programs has dropped significantly over the past 8 years. How are you going to make sure that those guys are not missing out?
Well, we clearly want sentenced offenders to get access to those rehabilitation services, and I agree. I've looked at that, I remember a year or so ago, and could see there was a big drop-off in participation in those rehab services. But also, we've got 45% of our prisoners on remand, and actually we also want to make sure that those also get access to those rehab services quicker too, and that's what this is about, this particular piece of spending here. But obviously, we've still got work to do to make sure we've got more rehabilitation being done while we've got prisoners in our system. That's our big opportunity to get them to turn their lives around. So we are very committed to rehabilitation. We're very committed to social investment ultimately as well. But we are going to be really clear. We are going to restore law and order, and a series of actions in 161 days, of which this is one of them, will help us do that.
Just on the Auckland shooting.
Sorry, yes.
Prime Minister, the 445 million over 4 years, that's 5.8% of corrections' entire budget over the next 4 years. So how can you possibly not touch the front line if you're cutting 5.8% from the entire corrections budget?
Well, as you know, we've asked for 6.5 to 7.5% across the system, out of the system, out of expenditure. And as we said, we've tasked CEOs very much with delivering that, saying go back to your back office, look at your front office.
That works out as 5.8% of the entire budget, not the back room, the entire budget.
And that's
4.9 billion a year.
And that is a good thing. I mean, there's been identifying 5.8% of expenditure that is actually not adding value that can be better redeployed into the frontline services.
That's right.
That's a good thing.
So it doesn't matter to you whether it comes from both the front line and the back office. That's 5.8% of the whole lot, including the front line.
Well, it has come. We have tasked our CEOs very clearly to say you need to prioritise the frontline services. I don't know how I can be any clearer about this, but it's just naturally what you do as a CEO. You take over an organisation. You have a certain budget. You've got to ask yourself, for the dollars that I'm spending, am I getting the results or the outcomes that I'm being asked to deliver against? We've been very clear on the targets and the goals that we have, and how CEOs deploy that money is completely up to them. But in this case, this is a great example where we've been able to recycle funds out of the back office into the front office so we can better support frontline correction services. Sorry, yes, Adam.
Are either of you aware whether the alleged offender has left the country or not?
Again, all I'd say on that is that it's a tragic set of circumstances, and our hearts go out to the family that has been impacted here. It's an ongoing police investigation. It'd be inappropriate for us to comment further than that at this point in time. No.
Have you received any kind of update on? Have you received any kind of update on the search for the alleged offender, either of you?
No, just what police have talked about publicly.
In terms of the rehabilitation for Māori prisoners, will you be ensuring that there is an increase in tikanga reo programs, rehabilitation, because they are working very well?
Absolutely, we remain fully committed to those, and highly value the relationships that we have with iwi and hapu that are engaged with the correction system in a really positive way and have got a big input to that.
And getting good results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Felix, you get the last question.
Remand.
Prime Minister, is the government committed to funding the Nelson Hospital?
Look, I mean, again, it's not something I've been briefed on. I'm conscious of the story that's broken today. What I'd say to you is the Minister has huge amount of complex pressures and infrastructure across healthcare. He'll be taking advice on that, and obviously we have more to say about that shortly.
Have you asked Health NZ to cut costs with regards to the rebuild of the Nelson?
Not that I'm aware of, no. It's just I'm just conscious that we've got workforce challenges in healthcare, we've got infrastructure challenges in healthcare, and we've wanted to put targets in place to get the focus on the frontline services, not the back office. Okay, team. Thank you so much.
We did a story on Friday about a remand prisoner who's spending 23 hours a day for months on end, locked in his cell. Should that be a priority over rehab programs?
So let me be clear. Some of those prisoners that are locked up for 23 hours a day, and we, of course, we want to see a movement in the right direction on that. They are violent prisoners, and when you're a violent prisoner and you're a risk to other inmates and staff, then there's consequences around that. But on saying that, and coming back to the question around a sentenced prisoner receiving programs, I recognise, I'm the first one to recognise and say that corrections have been under a lot of pressure for the last 6 years in terms of numbers. And that has dictated the way that they manage the prison and the prisoners. And I'd have to say that because now we're starting to move in the right direction, we're actually starting to see quite a bit of success around recruiting, training and deploying new corrections officers. It means that now they're freeing up time and they're able to re-engage with programs. So there's a move in the right direction on that.
Corrections has acknowledged in court that it's failing to meet its minimum entitlements to prisoners. So is any of this investment going to go towards ensuring that those minimum standards are upheld? And if what you're saying in terms of heading in the right direction, at what point can you tell us? When will that happen?
I think we're just going to continue to see incremental movement in the right direction. I think it just comes back to the numbers, and the numbers have been a big challenge around resources, and we're moving in the right direction on that. I'm very proud of the work corrections are doing. The recruiting campaign is going extremely well, and like I said to you, I'm going to graduations every month. We're graduating over 130 new corrections officers a month at the moment.
Okay, team. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.